This is a follow-up video to go over the settings icon in the Butler robotic system. In one of our previous videos, we did these four tabs: Update, Parameters, Machine, and Test. And again, we are on the Butler robotic side under Settings. Now we're going to go over the advanced functions of the Butler robotic system. I'm going to click on Advanced. Now when I click on Advanced, it usually brings up a screen saying, are you sure you want to go into that screen? And I'm going to show you that really quick. So when I bring this up right there, and the reason that it didn't bring it up before is because I had already previously selected the check mark and gone into that screen. If I select check mark and don't leave my settings, then it will not ask me to do this again. But these settings are critical to the performance of your machine. Changing these values are not recommended. Do you want to continue? And I'm going to say check mark. Now, I want to educate you on why we use these respective buttons, what value they have to me as I'm running my system. There are several values in here that we do highly recommend you do not change. They are imperative to how the system runs. But there are some values in here that may potentially be beneficial for me to change, okay? And I'm going to explain to you which ones those are. XKP, YKP, acceleration, curvature, and lead line speed. These are the 5 values that make this L shape right here that I am going to explain today that potentially may be beneficial for you to change when you're running your pattern. These 4 values here, XKI, YKI, XKD, YKD, I would recommend you do not change unless you are on the phone with our tech support. Down here across the bottom, show demo stitcher interface. This is for me as a dealer or somebody who is at a show who wants to show a customer what the quilting machine user interface looks like. I can check that if I have a robotic system only. That's how I can check and show a customer just basically what the stitching interface looks like. And then right here, ignore colors. There is a function that is built into the system and several softwares that will allow you to do this. For example, the 5D and the 6D software that is put out by the Viking and Pfaff company. They will allow you to color lines of your pattern. So I can come in and I can color a line red, and I can color a line blue, and I can color a line green. Every time that the robotic system is running that pattern and it gets to the end of the red, it will stop and it will tell you, change your color. The theory behind this is you want to change the color of thread that you're running on that pattern. It then starts to run the, I believe I said blue, it starts to run the blue line. It runs, and it comes to the end of the blue line, it will stop again and it will say change your color. And I can actually change the color of thread, and I can say, and it's just like a thread break. I can say check mark, and it will continue to run right there, and it will continue to run the green line for that piece. That's if my pattern is coming in with different colored lines. Now, for the most part, all of the patterns that are in the system, not for the most part, all the patterns that come preloaded in the system, these are all one color lines. You can see they're all black. If they were different colors, they would show up right here on the screen. This is if my patterns come in at a different color, that's when this piece comes into play. And if they are in there in a different color and I actually want to ignore those colors, I check the box and it will ignore the colors of my respective pattern. These 5 values here, these are the ones we're going to be going over. I want you to think of these values like a car. Like you're driving a car, these 5 values I think are going to help if you think of them like my machine, my quilting machine is like a car. XKP and YKP. This is like the tires on your car. The tires of your car, they need to grip the road to make sure that your car doesn't slide all over the place as it is driving down the street. How well does your car grip the road depends on how good your tires are, and depends on how much tread you have on your tires. Those tires that don't have very much tread, it's a lot easier for my car to slip around on the road. Same thing for this XKP and YKP. It is going to be running a pattern down, let's say right here, we've got the star pattern still right here. I'm going to be running this line, this straight line down to this corner, and then I'll be running the straight line up to this area, and then I'll be coming down across this way. As it runs this line, how well does it follow that line? When I'm driving my car straight, how well can I go straight? Or when I make this turn around this corner, how well do I follow that corner turn? The XKP and the YKP determine that. So right now, we at the factory, we have found this 30 value to be a good value to set the powers at, to set how well it grips that line at. I can bump this number up by pressing the number, and I can bump it up to 50. This will not harm my system, but what it will tell the system is grip on the x-axis, left to right. I want you to grip a little bit better. I want you to almost grip almost double what you used to be. On the YKP, same thing, I can type in 50. I want you to grip, and it's not a percentage. This is not a percentage number. This is just an arbitrary number. I want you to grip 50. I want you to grip 20 more than you were before. Now you might be saying, well, why don't I just bump this up to 1,000,000? Grip the best you ever possibly could. Now you know that we use rubber belts on our system. There is a rubber belt with a steel cord run the length of your system, and there is a rubber belt with a polyester cord run the width of your system. The black belt is polyester, the white belt is a steel cord. Like a rubber band, and you plucking the rubber band, this motor is trying to track this line of this star as best as it possibly can. It is trying to follow this line as best as it possibly can. And when it does that, it has what we call a pulsation. It pulses as it tries to track this. It tries to stay exactly on top of that line as best it can. Well, with it trying to stay on top of that line as best it can, it causes what we call a vibration. There is a vibration that happens in the system as it tries to do that. The more I bump up this number, the more power I allow to go through that motor to track on that line, the more vibration that is caused in the system. Now, vibration is not bad. It doesn't harm the system. It doesn't break my machine. It doesn't break the motor box. At the end of the day, it's really just annoying. I can hear this audible vibration as the system is trying to run. The only thing that it's bad for is myself and my sanity and me trying to listen to my machine as it's running. It will not harm my system to have a vibration in the piece. But we have found that a 30 value for my power, and a 30 value here for my power works well. It tracks very well on that pattern, and you rarely ever will be able to see a variance in the piece. Now, if I bump this way down, let's say I bump it down to 5, okay? And again, remember, this is like your tires of your car. When I bump this down to 5, as I'm running down this line, let me zoom into this just a little bit. As I'm running down the line of this star, okay, if my power is at 5, I can actually do this, and I can actually bounce over the top of that line as I'm running down this direction. Now, I am bouncing extremely drastically across that line, but as I come around, I can actually bounce over the line, and the more I dial in that power, the higher up that number goes, the less bounce I'm going to get as I'm coming across the line. Now, at the 30, I would be hard-pressed to see any kind of variation, any kind of bounce across this line. And the more I bump up that number, just the tighter it's going to make that. The tighter it's going to make that number, that direction, track that respective piece. So default value is 30. And I'm just going to leave these two at 30 because I have found on our system here for it to work well. But if you find that your machine is just a little bit heavier, and for the system to track properly across your line requires you to bump that number up just a little bit, move in increments of 10. Bumping up by 1s and 2s is really not a lot for this piece. If you need to adjust this, do in increments of 10. So you can bump up to 40, rerun your test. Bump up to 50, rerun your test. And if you find at those values it seems to track better across your line, you don't have that variance across your line like you are seeing with your machine, then great. Have those numbers up at a higher value. Acceleration and curvature. These two are very similar, but they are a difference. Acceleration, like your car, when you're at the stoplight, your car is not moving, your brakes are on. Acceleration is from a stop. How fast will the robotic system get up to its running speed? And that's not this one, that's not lead line speed, that is the max speed the system is running, and max speed is seen when you go in to run your pattern, you say check mark right here. This max speed value is seen right here on the screen of 50. That's what it means when it goes into max speed. Okay? I'm going to cancel that. So acceleration, how fast, and this is in a percentage, how fast will it go from a stop or a slower speed up to my max speed? This is going to go 40%, so it's going to push down the gas pedal 40% of the way. If I say, you know what, my machine's just a little bit heavier, my machine seems to jerk or pulse as it goes from a stop trying to get up to speed, then I would recommend bumping this number down. Bumping it down, pushing the gas pedal down 20%. Don't jerk the system. Don't put a ton of power into the system right off the get-go. Don't floor your car as you're trying to get going. Gradually push the pedal down to give us that acceleration that we're looking for. So I can bump this acceleration number down to give me a slower acceleration, which for those heavier machines gives me a smoother acceleration sometimes. On this model here, we have found it to run well. Our machine here weighs about 45 to 50 pounds. We have found this 40% acceleration to work quite well on this model. Now, acceleration does not mean I am instantly going from 0 up to that 50 max speed that you just saw. Again, this is a percentage. Acceleration is from 0 to the 50. How quickly does it get up there? And that's the 40%. It's going to push down the gas pedal 40%, and it's going to accelerate up, and it's going to accelerate down as it comes into the corners, and as it runs these individual pieces, it's going to, from right here, it's going to accelerate up to 50. It's then going to slow down for the corner. It's then going to accelerate up again, slow down for the corner, accelerate up, slow down. So that's where our curvature now comes into play. Every time we come into one of those corners, how much does it slow down for those corners? This is also a percentage. But the piece here that becomes a little bit difficult to understand is some corners are tighter than other corners, just like driving your car. If I am making a U-turn, that is a 180-degree turn. I'm not going to take that U-turn the same speed I would take a right turn or a left turn for another street. I'm not going to take a left or a right turn the same speed that I would take just a curve in the road. I'm going to adjust my speed in my car depending on what type of turn I'm making. Same thing here. The system will adjust its speed depending on how tight that curve actually is. But once it goes into that curve, how fast will it actually take that curve? Again, in relation to how tight the curve actually is, it's going to take it at 40% of the max speed. So remember, our max speed is currently 50. It's going to take it at 40%. So 40% of that is going to be 50. 10% is 5. So 40%, 5, 10, 15, 20, that is going to be 20 less than it is currently running. Not 20% less, because I'm running 40% less. It's going to be 20 less, so it's going to be 30 less than what it's currently running. It's going to take my corner at 30 for those corners. But remember, the piece that becomes a little complicated here is how tight your corner actually is also plays into this value. And that is a difficult piece to help understand, because different corners are tighter depending on if I bump this star up and I make this star larger. You can see how large these corners are now. These corners are not the same tight corners that they used to be. They're now more of an arc instead of a nice pointed corner. That's going to play into this curvature number and how fast it actually goes around a curve. This one is more up to you. If you're running a nice, open, flowing pattern and you don't want it to slow down as much as it has been for those corners, bump the number up. Bump it up to 50, 60, 100. If you do 100, that means it will not slow down for the corner. It will just continue to run the same max speed it always has been. Okay? So having the curvature and acceleration. So those are the two. How quickly do I go from a stop or a slow down period, and how quickly do I run a curve? Lead line speed. This is wherever my machine is currently sitting. So my crosshair is currently sitting right here. Okay? My pattern start point is currently right here. For it to go from point A over to my start point, it's not stitching. This has nothing to do with running the pattern. This is just going from where the machine is currently sitting to where it needs to be, to the start point of the pattern. How quickly will it get there? I don't need this to run extremely accurately over to that start point. At the end of the day, me as the quilter, I want it to get to that start point as quick as possible so I can begin running the pattern. That's where the lead line speed comes into play. We found that 80 is fine. You can bump this up to 100 if you want to. Bump it up to 100 and it will always go its max speed. And max speed is only off of what it is currently running. Remember those dials you had here on the running screen. It is going to move over to the start of your pattern at the 100% speed. Of that, max speed that you saw over there. Okay, so depending on what your max speed is currently set to, will determine what your lead line speed is currently running. Those are the advanced features of the system. And let me make a correction here on the lead line speed. I apologize. That lead line speed is actually just 100% speed. That is not 100% of your max speed that you see here on the running screen. It is 100% of the speed. It will move your machine at 100% of what the robotic system could move to get over to the start of that pattern as quickly as it possibly can. Again, this is not running your pattern. This is just from wherever your machine is currently sitting to where the start point of the next pattern is. How quickly will it get there? It will run 100% with this in relation to acceleration. It will accelerate at a 40% pedal push down, a 40% speed up to the 100% up here, and then it will decelerate at a 40% down to the start of that next pattern. These three buttons that you see down here across the bottom, motor life test. This is a button that is used only here at the factory. You will never, 100% of the time, never use this button out in the field. Demo mode. This is more for a dealer or an individual who's at a show and they want to run a pattern over and over and over again without having to come back to the machine often. This demo mode, I have the star that's here on the screen with these 2 stars. This demo mode will run these patterns over and over and over again 1,000 times. I can turn on and off my stitching just by pressing the button that's right here, turning off my stitching. But demo mode is just like a commercial. It will run that pattern over and over and over again. Robot communication. This is something that you would use if you're here on the phone with our tech support, and it turns on and it tells us what ports are currently being communicated on. Nothing you as a user would really use out in the field. This is really just for us to confirm a couple things if we need to on the telephone. Thanks for joining us today. These are the advanced features of the Butler robotics system. Check back often at our Facebook site and our webpage, Quilt-EZ.com, to go over new functions and features of the system, as well as any new videos that may be available. And then, like I said, on our Facebook page, we often post new videos and sales and deals of the system as well. So check back at our Facebook page often. Thank you for your time.